We're going to read on verse number 6, Genesis 3:6. So, it says, so when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, when the woman saw, say when the woman saw. Today I'm going to talk about women's evil eye. I'm just kidding. That's just I didn't have a lot of sleep in the past few nights, so I'm sorry if I'm throwing a little bit of curveballs here. I'm not going to talk about that. There's a message there, but it's not the type of message that we want to preach here. Amen? I'm sure some pastor has preached that message already. We're going to talk about overcoming in a media-saturated world. Overcoming in a media-saturated world. You may sit down. When the woman saw. I'm going to talk about some things. Something that I've been just thinking, praying, and feeling for. When I say feeling, I want to say feeling with emotions, most trying to feel after the spirit of what's happening. So from this verse right now, all we need to know is when the woman saw. That's all we need from this verse. We're going to talk about what's happening in the world that we live in. The world that we live in. For example, I said this, I didn't say it in the English service yet, but I said it in one of the Spanish Thursdays. Talked about the problems we're having with culture today. We're having major problems with culture. This is a word that you may not be familiar with, or a phrase, you could say a statement. But there's a statement called today religious pluralism. Religious pluralism. To us that can mean like, what? But if you go to an Ivy League school, they know all about religious pluralism. It's pretty much the thoughts. That's where academia today, the schools, universities, and not just Ivy League schools. We're talking about the world of college, nationwide, is pushing the agenda of religious pluralism. What does that mean? It means that there is a plurality of religions, and no religion can claim to be the one. The one. So for example, religious pluralists will teach something like, there was 3 blind Indian men, and they were touching different parts of the elephant. So one was touching a trunk of the elephant. The other one was touching the leg of the elephant. And the other was touching the middle of the elephant. And one was saying, this elephant, this is like a tree. Feels like a tree. Like, he was feeling the trunk, and the trunk has texture. So it's feeling like a tree. The other one was saying, this feels like a tower, grabbing the leg. And the other one say, this feels like the wall, grabbing the stomach, touching the stomach. And what religious pluralists say, you see, they're all feeling different things and having different realities, but they're all touching one elephant. And that's the way it's taught in colleges today. That doesn't matter, you may feel it this way, you may feel it this way. We're all part of really a global conscious religion. And so this is something that is pushed very strongly. All religions are the same. And your reality is not my reality. So, for example, so that we understand also where we are in culture. And I'm going to have a class later on. We're going to have a class on how to talk to religious pluralists. How to attend. For example, if a religious pluralist is going to tell me this analogy or any similar analogy about God or about religion, I'll tell her, well, but how do you know they were all touching the same elephant? How do you know they were really touching an elephant? Or how do we know that they were touching different animals? Again, why? Because the whole objection is taught from a complete assumption that there's 3 Indian men touching an elephant. We don't really know if there was 3 Indian men. What if there was 10? Well, the whole thing is an imagination. And we are teaching truth from an imagination. And that's the problem. And we're going to be talking today about that, about imaginations. They're teaching something that they consider strong truth out of just their own imaginations, their own way of seeing things, and that is so dangerous. For example, there's 3 eras that have passed. We're in the 3rd era. The first era was the pre-modern culture. Pre-modern, pre-computers, pre-everything. We're talking about, the 1800s and down, the pre-modern era. Then we enter into the modern era. The modern era, the era of development, the era of growth. And after that, we enter the post-modern era. We are in the postmodern era. We are beyond modern. We are in ridiculous. That's what we're in. We are about to see cars flying and holograms and all kinds of things. We are entering that era. And we are part of that era now. But there is a college professor speaking on the challenge that we have today. He was speaking on the eras, and he was saying this analogy to explain us how things have changed from generation to generation. So it says the pre-moderns would have said, there's balls and there's strikes. Speaking of baseball, there is balls and there is strikes. And I call them as they are. So those are the pre-moderns. I call them as they are. The modernists would have said, there is balls and there is strikes. And I call them as I see them. So there's a transition from what they are to how I see them. But the postmoderns today say, they ain't nothing until I call them. The postmodernist movement in the world that we are, it's understood by people create their own reality. People make their own world, their own universe, their own religion. Amen? People make it their own religion, their own ways of thinking. You think that way, I think this way. And we create our ultimate truths. And people are living by their ultimate truths, forsaking reality and absolute truth. So today we don't talk about absolute truth. Absolute truth is there's only one way to heaven, and that is only through Jesus Christ. That's absolute truth. But that goes against society today. So you cannot claim that only through Jesus Christ there's the way to heaven.